thing you need to know before you do blueprints or footprint libraries, etc., you need to learn how to draw the scale. Why do we draw the scale? We draw the scale because, for example, this little Triceratops, he looks like a Triceratops, but obviously he's not as big as a Triceratops. So in order to be accurate, when you put something into a smaller version, we have to draw it to scale. So we take in a measurement and then we minimize it. First thing you need to do is turn to your packet and take out the drawing to scale worksheet. Read through all of that, read through the directions, and you're going to measure a couple items in the classroom, and it'll be of your choice when you get to it. You can be a desk, a chair, or whatever. But basically, you're going to, for a measurement guide, you're going to use the squares on our classroom floors. One of these squares equals one of the little squares on your drawing. So if, for example, if I walk over and I have a chair that I just kind of put in the middle, we're going to say roughly-ish, it takes up like the center part of 4 squares. So when I go to draw it on my paper, I will basically take up 4 squares for a chair. Okay, that would be drawing to scale. Obviously, it's not as big as the chair, but on our paper, it will be the same size throughout. Something else to note, when you are drawing your blueprint and drawing these to scale thing, you are drawing it from like that you are looking down on the chair like I am right now. You are not measuring or drawing for how high it is, because obviously on our paper it is 2D. So basically you'll be drawing on your paper like you're looking at it from standing above it. To give you a little bit of look ahead, this is some examples that they had that they drew to scale. Now obviously they use the measuring tape, etc., but for time purposes, for us and for ease, you won't use the measuring tapes and down to the inches. When we buy things off the internet that you will use in your projects, they will already have the measurements there for you. So when you do your classroom exercise, again, just use the squares as your guide to kind of rough guess how big the item is. After completing your drawing to scale worksheet, go ahead and turn to the footprint library worksheet, which is what I just showed you a minute ago. Find that in your packet and then come back to the video. Okay, so now you got your footprint library worksheet and you've kind of looked that over. And so what is the point of this? The point is so that you have a library of measurements. So when you go to create your bedrooms or your house, you know how big a refrigerator is or how much floor space a table takes. We don't need small things like books, movable things. We want stuff that we need measurements of items that take up floor space. So we make sure that our rooms are designed big enough. So your assignment for the next 3 nights is you're going to go home and you're going to measure common items like TVs, refrigerators, stoves, toilets, anything that takes up floor space on your house, bookcases, counters, cupboards, anything of that nature. Besides recording the measurements, you're going to draw footprints, which is what we did before, the scale. And a footprint is the floor space covered by an object, which I just talked about. Try to visualize the shadow, if that helps. The shadow of the item would make it if a light shone on top of it, like we talked about before, that we're looking from like above. And generally the footprint shapes are quite ordinary, like ovals, rectangles, squares don't get elaborate to where you're moving on every little inch. And then look at the measurements you have of objects in the room. What shape footprint would a desk make? A bookcase? How about a doorway and a chalkboard? And then turn those into me and I will give you feedback on them. Now when you go home to measure things, obviously you're not going to have squares on the floor to go by. So you need to use a ruler or a measuring tape. Basically you got to think about the square. It is basically 12 inches on each side. So if you're measuring length and width, then you basically need to convert that into squares that they're, divide by 12 depending on how many. If I had a table that was 60 inches long, for example, I would divide that by 12 and I would roughly have 5 squares that I need to go lengthwise, and then I would need to figure out widthwise, looking at that overall from the top. So you need to go at least length and width, no height, again, because we're in 2D, we're not in 3D, okay? And at this time, if you haven't already read through your student guide, shown here in the pictures, go ahead and read through the first 3 pages. And if you also notice on page 4, there is a client and family unit list along with the income that they make yearly. I want you to start looking at this and decide what client would you like to build for.